Imagine driving through a city where the streets are filled with over 1 million abandoned cars. Welcome to Japan, where the problem of car abandonment has become a national crisis. You might be thinking, what's behind this staggering number, or how did it come to this? Well, let's take a closer look. Japan's population decline and aging population have led to a significant decrease in car sales. This might not seem like a big deal at first, but it's had a ripple effect on the entire automotive industry. For years, Japan was one of the world's largest car markets. People were buying and selling cars left and right. But as the population aged and the birth rate plummeted, car sales began to dwindle. In fact, according to the Japanese Automobile Manufacturers Association, car sales have been declining steadily since 1990. In 2020, car sales hit a record low, with over 5 million vehicles sold, a far cry from the 6.5 million sold just a decade earlier. This decline in sales has led to a massive surplus of unsold cars, which have been left to collect dust in dealerships and on dealership lots. But the problem doesn't stop there. Many of these unsold cars have been abandoned by their owners, left to rust and decay in public parking lots, on streets, and even on private property. It's estimated that over 1 million cars are abandoned in Japan every year, with some estimates suggesting that as many as 2 million cars are abandoned nationwide. The economic cost of abandoned cars in Japan is staggering. Estimates suggest that it costs the country over 1 billion annually to dispose of these vehicles. This includes the costs of towing, storage, and eventual scrapping or recycling. But the real cost is even higher when you factor in the environmental impact of abandoned cars. Cars that are left to rust can leak toxic chemicals into the soil and water, damaging local ecosystems and posing a significant health risk to nearby residents. So, what's causing this issue, and what's being done to address it? Well, the answer is complex and multifaceted. One major factor is the lack of a centralized system for disposing of abandoned vehicles. In Japan, the onus is on the owner to dispose of their vehicle, which can be a costly and bureaucratic process. This has led to a situation where many owners simply abandon their vehicles rather than facing the costs and hassle of disposal. Another factor is the strict regulations surrounding car scrapping in Japan. The country has some of the toughest car scrapping regulations in the world, which can make it difficult and expensive to dispose of a vehicle. This has led to a black market for car scrapping, where unscrupulous operators take advantage of vulnerable owners and the environment. But there are also initiatives underway to address the issue of abandoned cars in Japan. The government has launched several programs aimed at reducing the number of abandoned vehicles on the roads. These include initiatives to provide financial support to owners who want to dispose of their vehicles, as well as programs to promote the use of electric and hybrid cars, which have lower disposal costs. In addition, several companies are working on innovative solutions to the problem of abandoned cars. One company, for example, is developing a system that uses artificial intelligence to identify and locate abandoned vehicles, making it easier for authorities to track and dispose of them. But here's what most people don't know: the issue of abandoned cars in Japan is not just an environmental problem, it's also a social and economic issue. Many of the owners who abandon their vehicles are elderly or low-income individuals who are struggling to make ends meet. They may not have the resources or support to dispose of their vehicles properly, leaving them to languish on the streets. As we explore the issue of abandoned cars in Japan further, we'll be looking at the human side of the story. We'll talk to owners who have abandoned their vehicles, as well as experts who are working to address the problem. We'll also look at the economic and environmental implications of abandoned cars, and what can be done to prevent this crisis from getting worse. But for now, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. The issue of abandoned cars in Japan is a complex and multifaceted problem that requires a comprehensive solution. It's not just about disposing of vehicles, it's about addressing the underlying social and economic issues that are driving this crisis. And it's not just about Japan, it's about the global implications of a car-centric economy and the environmental consequences of our actions. So, what do you think? How can we address the issue of abandoned cars in Japan? Share your thoughts and ideas in the comments below. And if you want to learn more about this issue, be sure to check out the links in our description box. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Here's the detailed script content for the section, the economic and environmental impact. You've probably already guessed by now that the abandoned car crisis in Japan is more than just a fascinating anomaly. It's a symptom of a much larger issue, one that affects both our economy and the planet we call home. Let's take a closer look at how abandoned cars are impacting the environment and the economy. First, let's talk about the environmental impact. When you picture a landfill, you might imagine a sprawling, barren wasteland filled with trash and debris. But what if I told you that many of those landfills are actually filled with abandoned cars? It's true. In Japan, it's estimated that over 200,000 vehicles are disposed of each year, with many ending up in landfills or incinerators. That's a staggering number, especially when you consider the toxic chemicals that these vehicles can release into the environment. One of the biggest environmental concerns is the presence of hazardous materials like lead, mercury, and cadmium. These chemicals can leach into nearby soil and water sources, posing a risk to local wildlife and even human health. And it's not just about the chemicals themselves, it's also about the carbon emissions associated with abandoned cars. When vehicles sit idle, they continue to consume energy and contribute to climate change. Now, let's shift our focus to the economic impact. You might be thinking, okay, so abandoned cars are bad for the environment. But what about their economic impact? Well, it turns out that the economic costs of abandoned cars are significant. Not only do they contribute to urban blight and decreased property values, but they also pose a risk to public safety. Imagine driving down a street lined with abandoned cars, some of which may be in hazardous condition. In addition to these costs, abandoned cars also pose a significant economic burden on local governments. In Japan, it's estimated that the cost of disposing of abandoned vehicles is in the billions of yen each year. That's money that could be spent on more pressing issues like infrastructure development or social welfare programs. So, what's being done to address the issue of abandoned cars in Japan? The government has implemented a number of measures to encourage car disposal, including stricter regulations and incentive programs. For example, some municipalities are offering tax breaks or other incentives to encourage residents to scrap their old vehicles. Others are providing designated areas for car disposal, making it easier for people to get rid of their abandoned vehicles. But here's the thing, the government's efforts might not be enough to tackle the root cause of the problem. Let's explore what's driving this issue further. In the next section, we'll take a closer look at the cultural and social factors that are contributing to the abandoned car crisis in Japan. We'll examine the role of consumerism, the importance of car culture, and the impact of social media on our behavior. By understanding these factors, we can begin to develop a more comprehensive solution to this complex problem. Now, imagine you're walking down a street in Japan, surrounded by row upon row of abandoned cars. It's a surreal experience, to say the least. But what if I told you that this phenomenon is not just limited to Japan? In fact, abandoned cars can be found all over the world, from the United States to Europe. It's a global issue that requires a global solution. So, what can we learn from Japan's experience with abandoned cars? For one thing, it highlights the importance of sustainable consumption and waste management. By implementing policies that encourage recycling and reuse, we can reduce the amount of waste that ends up in landfills. We can also learn from Japan's example in terms of car culture and consumerism. By promoting a more nuanced understanding of the role that cars play in our lives, we can begin to shift our values and behaviors. As we continue to explore the abandoned car crisis in Japan, we'll be examining a range of solutions that can help to mitigate the issue. From innovative technologies to community-based initiatives, we'll be looking at the innovative ways that people are working to address this complex problem. So, stay tuned for our next section, where we'll dive deeper into the cultural and social factors that are driving the abandoned car crisis in Japan. Before we move on, take a moment to think about the abandoned cars that you've seen in your own life. Have you ever driven past a street lined with abandoned vehicles? How did it make you feel? Did you ever stop to think about the environmental and economic costs of these abandoned cars? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. In our next section, we'll be exploring the cultural and social factors that are contributing to the abandoned car crisis in Japan. But for now, let's take a moment to reflect on the economic and environmental impact of abandoned cars. It's a complex issue that requires a comprehensive solution, one that takes into account the needs of both people and the planet. From debt to demographics, let's dive into the underlying factors driving the abandoned car crisis in Japan. You might be wondering, what's behind this staggering number of over 1 million abandoned cars? As we explore the root cause of this issue, you'll see that it's a complex web of economic, social, and cultural factors. One of the key factors contributing to the abandoned car crisis is the collapse of Japan's auto industry. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Japan's automotive sector was booming, with major manufacturers like Toyota and Honda dominating global markets. However, as the global financial crisis hit in 2008, demand for cars plummeted, and the industry was left with a massive surplus of vehicles. As a result, car sales decreased dramatically, and many dealerships were forced to close. This has led to a situation where there are now more cars on the market than there are buyers. But that's not all. Japan's aging population and shrinking workforce are also playing a significant role in the abandoned car crisis. As the country's population ages, there are fewer young people entering the workforce, which means fewer people are earning incomes and buying cars. This demographic shift has resulted in a decrease in car buyers, contributing to the abandoned car problem. In fact, according to recent statistics, the number of car buyers in Japan has declined by over 20 in the past decade. This means that there are simply not enough people buying cars to absorb the surplus on the market. Now, let's talk about the cultural significance of cars in Japan. In Japan, cars are not just a mode of transportation, they are a status symbol, a reflection of one's success and prosperity. Many Japanese people see owning a car as a symbol of their social status, and it's not uncommon for people to spend years saving up to purchase their dream car. However, this cultural obsession with cars has contributed to the abandoned car crisis. With fewer people buying cars and more people defaulting on loans, there are now many cars sitting idle on lots and in parking garages. But here's the thing, it's not just about the economics and demographics. It's also about the societal values that underpin Japan's car culture. In Japan, there's a strong emphasis on collectivism and conformity, which can make it difficult for people to let go of their car-owning status symbol. As a result, many people are holding on to their cars, even if they can no longer afford to maintain them. This cultural attachment to cars has created a situation where there are many abandoned vehicles on the market, with no clear solution in sight. You're probably thinking, what can be done to address this issue? Well, before we dive into solutions, let's explore some of the most interesting and innovative approaches being used in Japan to tackle the abandoned car crisis. From repurposing old cars as art installations to creating new business models for car ownership, we'll take a closer look at the creative solutions that are emerging to address this complex problem. So, stay tuned, and let's find out what the future holds for Japan's abandoned cars. From creative disposal methods to community-led initiatives, Japan is finding unique solutions to the abandoned car crisis. As we explore these innovative approaches, you'll see that they are not only reducing waste but also transforming the way people interact with their environment. Let's start with one of the most striking examples, car crushing and recycling. In a country where space is scarce, innovative companies are taking advantage of the abundance of abandoned cars to create a lucrative recycling industry. These companies use advanced machinery to crush and shred the vehicles, extracting valuable metals like copper, aluminum, and steel. The process not only reduces waste but also generates revenue for local communities. But car crushing is just the beginning. Community-led initiatives are taking abandoned cars and turning them into something entirely new. In the city of Tokyo, for instance, a group of residents has established a car-sharing program that allows people to rent out their old vehicles to neighbors and friends. Not only does this reduce the number of abandoned cars on the road, but it also fosters a sense of community and cooperation among residents. Another innovative project is using abandoned cars as planters for urban farming. Yes, you read that right, abandoned cars are being converted into gardens, complete with soil, seeds, and even tiny irrigation systems. This creative solution not only beautifies urban landscapes but also provides fresh produce to local residents. It's a win-win for everyone involved. But what about technology? Can it play a role in addressing the abandoned car crisis? The answer is a resounding yes. AI-powered car disposal systems are now being used in Japan to identify and dispose of abandoned vehicles more efficiently. These systems use advanced algorithms to detect and track abandoned cars, reducing the need for manual labor and minimizing the environmental impact of disposal. Furthermore, smart city infrastructure is being designed with the abandoned car crisis in mind. Cities are now incorporating sensors and data analytics to monitor and manage abandoned vehicles in real time. This allows for more effective waste management and reduces the risk of abandoned cars becoming a safety hazard. As we conclude our journey into the world of abandoned cars in Japan, let's summarize the key takeaways and explore what we can learn from this crisis. We've seen how innovative disposal methods, community-led initiatives, and technology are coming together to address the abandoned car crisis. But what's most striking is the creativity and resourcefulness of the Japanese people in the face of adversity. They are not just finding solutions to a problem, they are transforming their communities and creating a better future for everyone. So, we've explored the complex issue of abandoned cars in Japan, from the economic and environmental impact to innovative solutions. Now, it's time to take a step back and reflect on what we've learned. As you watch this video, you might be wondering, what can we learn from this crisis? First and foremost, it's essential to address the root cause of the problem, rather than just treating the symptoms. We've seen how debt, demographics, and other factors have contributed to the abandoned car crisis. But by understanding the root cause, we can develop more effective solutions that tackle the underlying issues. For example, in some areas of Japan, community-led initiatives have been successful in reducing abandoned cars by implementing affordable transportation options and promoting car-sharing services. Another key takeaway from this crisis is the potential for innovative solutions to address complex social and environmental issues. We've seen how creative disposal methods, such as using abandoned cars as art installations or playgrounds, have not only reduced waste but also transformed the way people interact with their environment. These innovative approaches demonstrate that there's often more than one way to solve a problem, and that thinking outside the box can lead to remarkable results. As we've explored throughout this video, community-led initiatives and collaborative approaches have been instrumental in tackling the abandoned car crisis. By working together, individuals, organizations, and governments can develop and implement effective solutions that benefit everyone involved. For instance, in some Japanese cities, local residents have come together to create community gardens using abandoned cars as planters. Not only does this reduce waste, but it also provides a beautiful and functional green space for the community to enjoy. As we conclude this journey, it's clear that the abandoned car crisis in Japan is a complex issue with no easy solutions. However, by understanding the root cause and exploring innovative approaches, we can learn valuable lessons and take steps towards a more sustainable future. So, what's next? How can we apply these lessons to our own lives and communities? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.